Good morning, Samson. My view is that they are not tenable. We have significant challenges with the proposals that have been made by the regulated utilities. And our analysis suggests that given the comparative analysis we've conducted with other markets in the world, in short, the regulated utilities are having a laugh. They cannot justify the demands that they are making. And we believe that PRC has every basis to begin active regulation. This tendency where it just sits there and requests for quality KPI data as opposed to probe the integrated resource plans of the utilities to establish whether or not the return on equity analysis that they are making is sound, is no longer viable. And if you want me to delve into it to a greater depth, I'm happy to do so.
Right. Let's dive into the deep right away.
So we have to just look at the numbers, right? I mean, ECG has a distribution service charge as a percentage of the end user tariff. So what you pay at the end is an aggregated number that comes from charging you for the generation of the power. So Akosombo is owned by VRA. They have a certain cost to producing the power. Then Gridco is owned by the government. They transmit the power to UCG. UCG is more or less owned by the government, and they send the power to your house as last mile distributors. And each of them take a piece of the amount of money that you pay. So if you look at UCG alone, they are getting like 2-point-something cents per kilowatt hour that they give to you. 2-point-something cents is really good. I mean, you look at utilities of the same size as ECG in many parts of the world, in Asia and the US and the rest. And they are making do with 1 cent, 1.5 cents, etc. So if you're getting 2 cents per kilowatt hour, you have to be quite inefficient to claim that, you know, that amount is much too low. So we have a problem. Of course, there are factors exogenous to their own operations, which we agree with them. And in that regard, I agree with Dr. Mantiel that we can't blame the regulated utilities alone because there are factors external to their operations that matter. But we still have to look at the numbers. Take the generators, for instance. Take VRA. VRA, not too long ago, published numbers that suggest that its fuel pass-through costs are being borne by the government to the tune of close to $1 billion now. Very soon, the government's share of the pass-through costs, that is the fuel costs and other costs for spares and the rest of it, is going to hit like $1 billion. Now, if you have those circumstances where that is being converted into equity, because that's how they are calculating it now, the government puts in money to discharge some of these obligations. The government assumes, therefore, that it increases equity in the holdings. And we have to ask ourselves, in those circumstances, whether the return on assets calculations that they are trying to suggest, the return on equity suggestions, is that the government, so like for instance, VRA says it should be 11-point-something% return on equity. Essentially, I have a certain set of assets. I need a return to justify those assets. But you don't own those assets. Those assets are owned by the state. And the state doesn't have that same degree of expectation in terms of return on equity. So if those are the circumstances, on what basis do you demand 11% return on equity when you're a state-owned utility and the state is increasing its equity contribution due to the fact that they are paying for your fuel? You're not paying for your fuel, right? You're not paying for your space. So it's already highly subsidized by the taxpayer. So when they look at just merely, when they merely just look at the tariff and they say we are not paying enough, they forget the fact that the government is buying them fuel, the government is buying their spares, and we are paying as taxpayers through that. So in effect, we're paying more than the published tariff.